He fell, not once, but twice. Right there, on the freezing sidewalk, in front of dozens of people, and no one stopped. A boy of about 10, wearing a torn jacket, dirty sneakers, and trembling fingers, was crawling toward the wall of a cafe, clutching an empty plastic cup. His lips were moving, but no words were coming out. Only soft, garbled murmurs. That boy was Ethan, and Ethan was autistic. His world was made up of shapes, echoes, and silence. He wasn't crying, he wasn't screaming, but his eyes were pleading. No one noticed, or didn't want to notice, until a black SUV pulled up. A man in a dark suit stepped out, surrounded by bodyguards, phones buzzing in his ears. The city was barely visible, another rich man who had to go somewhere. But Donald Trump wasn't just walking past him, his eyes were locked on the boy. He sensed something different in the boy, the trembling in Ethan's hands, the way his legs had been scraped from the fall, the way everyone was still walking. He took a step forward. "Hey man, where's your family?" Ethan didn't answer. He didn't look up, but after a few seconds with clumsy fingers, he pulled something out of his pocket, an old torn piece of paper. On it, an address, no name, just a place written in childish scribble. Trump looked at him, then at Ethan. "Get the car," he said quietly to his team. "We're leaving." This wasn't politics. This wasn't a show. This was a child the world couldn't see, seen at last. And the secret of this unknown was for man to solve. The car turned onto a cracked, forgotten street lined with worn-out buildings. Trump stepped out in front of a decaying apartment complex. Paint peeled off the walls, broken mailboxes hung open, and silence seeped from every window. Apartment 2B. He knocked. The door opened slowly. A frail, older woman, Margaret, stood frozen in place, clearly not expecting guests, let alone this man. Behind her, the air smelled of disinfectant and damp blankets. Trump stepped inside, and there he saw him. Michael, Ethan's father, was lying motionless in a hospital bed crammed into the tiny living room. His legs were thin, twisted unnaturally. Tubes lined his body. His eyes moved, barely. He was conscious, but broken. Ethan rushed past everyone and gently placed his head on his father's chest. He made soft sounds, ones only Michael could understand. The man blinked slowly in response, as if answering. Margaret tried to steady herself as she spoke. Her voice cracked. "Michael worked construction, 30 stories up." The elevator failed. He fell 3 floors, broke his spine. They waited an hour before calling an ambulance. They said it was his fault. Then they fired him. Trump stood silent. His eyes scanned the room. On the table sat an old photo, Michael and Ethan both smiling at the construction site. Michael wore a yellow helmet, Ethan a toy one, a memory frozen in a life that no longer moved. "His wife, she's fighting cancer, out of town for treatment," Margaret added. So Ethan started going out. For coins. He never asked, just sat. People ignored him. Trump picked up the photo, staring into Michael's past, and maybe his future. Trump didn't say a word on the ride back. The torn photo of Michael and Ethan sat on the seat beside him. His hands were clenched. His eyes didn't blink. Back at his office, he called his legal advisor and media strategist. "Find the company, find everything, and make it public." Within hours, a thick file landed on his desk. Pages filled with safety violations, ignored warnings, silenced workers. Titan Constructions, one of the biggest names in New York's high-rise industry, had buried more than just accidents. They'd buried people. Michael wasn't the first, but maybe, Trump thought, he'd be the last. Meanwhile, Ethan sat in the corner of his father's room, drawing with a broken pencil on the back of old receipts. Margaret handed Trump a folded paper, a handwritten accident report. It was never submitted. The most chilling part? The elevator had broken down 3 times that week. No one fixed it. No one cared. As Trump left, Ethan ran to the window, watching him disappear into the night. He held the same photo in his hands now, clutching it like armor. He didn't say a word, but Donald Trump was about to speak for him. The next morning, the city buzzed with anticipation. Every major news outlet had gathered in the press hall, their cameras trained on the podium like birds of prey waiting to capture history in the making. Bloggers, construction union leaders, advocacy groups, and everyday citizens squeezed into the room. It wasn't just another press conference. Something was different. Trump walked in with purpose. No red carpet, no political fanfare, just a stack of folders under his arm and an enlarged photo resting on an easel. Michael in his hospital bed, Ethan curled up beside him. He faced the crowd and held the photo up. This is the face of silence, the kind we've all learned to ignore. Then, slowly, he opened the file. Page after page, he laid bare the truth. Safety inspection reports that were never followed up, employees threatened into silence, repeated complaints erased from the record. Titan Constructions had built its fortune not just on concrete, but on buried pain. Trump's voice didn't rise. It cut like a scalpel, clear, deliberate, unshaken. This isn't just about one man. It's about a system that lets him fall and then pretends it never happened. He clicked a remote. The projector displayed a series of photos: the crumpled elevator shaft, Michael's x-rays, a security camera still from the day of the fall, time-stamped. Then came an audio clip, shaky and quiet. The voice of another injured worker, trembling as he described being told to keep quiet or lose your job. The room went silent. Then the internet erupted. Dr. Justice, for Michael trended within an hour. News articles popped up across platforms. Workers from across the country began sharing their own stories. Lost limbs, lost brothers, and worst of all, lost hope. But in the middle of it all was something unexpected. Ethan's drawing. A simple sketch of him and his dad under a bright sun. The word hope scribbled in jagged crayon. It was shared over 1 million times, printed in newspapers, even projected onto a billboard in Times Square. Donations poured in. Disability rights groups mobilized. Construction unions called for nationwide reforms. The real shock? Titan Construction's CEO stepped down within 48 hours. A federal investigation was launched. Congressional hearings were announced. And Michael, from his small apartment bed, smiled. For the first time in months, he wasn't just surviving, he was being heard. 3 months later, spring had arrived in New York. The streets were still busy, but something felt lighter, warmer, and in front of one newly renovated clinic, a crowd was gathering. A black SUV pulled up again. Trump stepped out. No press this time, no cameras, just purpose. A young woman stood at the door, visibly frail but smiling. Sarah, Michael's wife, was finally home from cancer treatment. Inside, balloons decorated the small apartment. A new hospital bed with wheels stood in the living room. Beside it, Michael sat upright, now in a custom electric wheelchair, his face fuller, his eyes no longer hollow. Ethan ran to the door the moment Trump entered. No hesitation. He grabbed his hand and tugged him inside. Michael tried to speak, his throat trembling. With effort, he whispered, "You changed everything." Trump didn't answer with words. He reached into a small leather bag and pulled out something, a framed version of the photo. Michael and Ethan at the construction site, but now edited. Behind them, in the background, stood a sketched version of Ethan's recent drawing, the sun, the word hope, and the two of them holding hands. Ethan pointed at the word. He looked up at Trump. "You made this real," he said. It was the first full sentence he had ever spoken to a stranger. Tears filled Sarah's eyes. Margaret leaned against the wall, quietly sobbing. Outside, the construction site where Michael had fallen was now surrounded by scaffolding. A large banner hung from the top floor. "Every life counts. Every voice matters." The broken elevator was gone, replaced, reinforced. The workers now wore helmets and safety harnesses that were double-checked every morning. And Michael? He was no longer a forgotten name buried in paperwork. He was a father, a fighter, and the reason change had begun. Trump turned to leave, but paused. He looked back at Ethan and said, "You didn't fall. You rose, and so did your father." As he walked away, the camera panned up, from a boy on a cold sidewalk to a city where one act of decency had rebuilt more than just a life. It had rebuilt dignity,